talking about another time and another era.
40 years after Screen Actors Guild President Ronald Reagan helped clear Hollywood actress Nancy Davis of false accusations of being a communist, the two stand together at the end of a long, victorious journey. As the Reagans begin to look forward to a life beyond the presidency, they have no idea that they are about to face the toughest battle of their lives.
Good evening. In a poignant open letter to the American people in his own handwriting, former President Ronald Reagan notified news agencies late today that he has been diagnosed as having Alzheimer's disease. I'll never forget that day in 1994. Mr. Reagan said he and Mrs. Reagan decided to make the news public because, in opening our hearts, we hope this might promote greater awareness of this condition. I remember reading this letter he had written in his own hand, and it was the most touching thing, it was the most dignified thing. He concludes the letter, "I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life." We all need to know how to leave, and so many times in Washington, people don't. Ronald Reagan knew how to make an exit. He had learned that in show business, and he made it that day.
The former president's days in the public eye are over. The man who has spent his entire adult life in the limelight is now living in quiet isolation with Nancy by his side.
For Nancy Reagan, the Alzheimer's diagnosis was devastating. First of all, she loved him. But secondly, they were both looking forward to this wonderful retirement where they would travel around the world and retreat to the ranch.
After he wrote the letter about his Alzheimer's disease, he continued to go to the office, he continued to walk in the park and sometimes to chat with people there. And then gradually it became harder for him to do even those things.
After a 10-year battle, Ronald Reagan's life ends on June 5th, 2004.
Praise that horse!
4 days after his death, the flag-draped casket carrying President Reagan's body arrives in the nation's capital for a 3-day state funeral.
The poet T.S. Eliot wrote, "Neither does the actor suffer, nor the patient act, but both are fixed in an eternal patience, an eternal act."
While the world remembers the man who led a nation, Nancy Reagan mourns the passing of her husband of 52 years.
You just felt the love and the loss. She just kind of stroked this coffin as if she were, you know, running her hands across his very body. It was not melodramatic, it was just very real.
People talk about Ronald Reagan's funeral, but it was Nancy Reagan's funeral. She produced and directed it and signed off on every detail of that funeral.
Well, I think Reagan's funeral was her last gift to him.
It was a fitting tribute to this man, but it was also in many ways a tribute to Nancy Reagan and to the courage and love that she had demonstrated and the part she'd played in this man's life.
On Friday, June 9th, the eyes of a nation are fixed on Washington National Cathedral. Inside, A mix of celebrities and world leaders, both past and present, gather with Reagan's family to remember their colleague and friend.
The turnout for Reagan was indicative of the mark that he had made. When you had even Gorbachev, who at one point had been the head of the evil empire and who by that time had seen communism in his country crumble in many ways because of the policies that Ronald Reagan had put in place. It was just an amazing day.
Following the ceremonies in Washington, Reagan's body is flown back to the West Coast and carried to its final resting place, Reagan's Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California. While there are 600 friends and family in attendance, around the nation, an estimated 35 million people are watching on 8 TV networks.
He is home now. He is free. In his final letter to the American people, Dad wrote, "I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life. This evening, he has arrived. History will record his worth as a leader. We here have long since measured his worth as a man."
As the sun fades beyond the horizon of the Pacific Ocean, Ronald Wilson Reagan is laid to rest. Not far from his body stands a piece of the Berlin Wall, a tattered symbol of the political battle and victory that was so very personal for Reagan. The man who as a young boy wandered the fields and woods, dreaming of a life as an adventurer, and who as president survived a would-be assassin's bullet, leaves behind a legacy of a life only he could imagine, and a world forever altered by his presidency.
In the total Reagan, you got a man who believed in America, understood America, and conveyed to the rest of the world what America was all about. You got a man who was respectful of the people who worked with him, a man who was respectful of the country and the citizens of the country that he worked for, a man who deeply loved his wife and family, and a man who stepped on the world stage from a most unlikely source and became a significant figure who helped bring about a historic change in the world.